14 seconds.
Hawaii, an emerald string of 8 major islands near the equator in the vast Pacific Ocean. To see it by air is a stunning journey. We'll travel across the main Hawaiian Islands. From Kilauea, a smoldering giant of a volcano, the most active on the planet, out past the shores of one of the most notorious leper colonies, where a brave priest waged a solitary war against the plague of death. On to Pearl Harbor, where waves of Japanese bombers turned a peaceful morning sky into an inferno that changed the world. And to Waikiki and beyond, where a legendary Olympic athlete introduced the world to the sport of surfing. Aerial Hawaii is a journey unlike any other on the face of the earth. Our journey of the Hawaiian Islands starts on the Big Island of Hawaii. So big, it's more than double the size of all the other Hawaiian islands combined. It's believed that the first humans may have set foot here around 500 AD. They likely were from the Marquesas Islands, 2,500 miles to the south. Why these Polynesian sailors set out for the unknown is a mystery. They sailed the open sea until finally the horizon yielded a glorious gift. The warm, welcoming sand of Hawaii. On the western shore of the island, the remains of a great stone wall stand as a monument to Hawaii's ancient culture. This is Pohuniwa Ahonanau, a sacred place that ancient Hawaiians believed held special powers. Built in the 1500s, its wall stands 1,000 feet long, 10 feet high, 17 feet thick. Not to repel enemies, but to provide sanctuary. If a law was broken, the penalty was often death. For severe crimes, the entire family of the accused was executed. Lawbreakers were given one shot at a reprieve. If they could escape and reach Pohuniwa before being captured, they were safe. Here, priests offered refuge and forgiveness. Whatever the crime, the fugitive was then allowed to return home without fear of retribution. For centuries, Hawaiians were unknown to the rest of the world. But in 1778, Captain James Cook, on expedition with 2 ships of the British Admiralty, became the first European to set foot here. The islanders received Cook and his men warmly. The consequences were fatal. Within 100 years of Cook's arrival, an estimated 90% of the indigenous population was wiped out. Dead from measles and other European diseases. But for Cook, death came much more swiftly. A year after his arrival, he anchored here. Some natives stole one of Cook's boats. The captain and a small landing party came ashore to retrieve it. More than 200 warriors attacked. Cook was struck in the head and killed. A white obelisk marks the spot where he fell. According to crew members, some friendly Hawaiians later returned Cook's body, or what remained of it: hands, scalp, a few bones, and the skull without its lower jaw. All of it burned. Traveling north along the coast, modern Hawaii beckons. At first glance, the Big Island appears to turn a cold shoulder to beach lovers. Hawaii has fewer sand beaches per mile than other islands in the chain. But the beaches it does have are among the best in the entire state. Some of the island's most opulent resorts hug its western shoreline. Like this one, the Mauna Kea Hotel. Built in 1965, situated between two ancient lava flows, Mauna Kea was the first resort here. The owner was Lawrence Rockefeller of the Rockefeller dynasty. As a venture capitalist, he was famous for providing early startup capital to two little companies named Intel and Apple. But he was also a pioneering conservationist, committed to building eco-friendly hotels that gave people a respectful access to nature. In Hawaii, the Mauna Kea Hotel is his legacy. Some rooms and suites here cost $1,000 a night. At the north end of the island, beauty gives way to mystery. What appears as little more than a rough pile of stones is actually what remains of an ancient temple of Mahukini Heiau. It's believed the site was used for human sacrifice to the Hawaiian war god, Ku. Tens of thousands were sacrificed here, though little blood was actually spilled. Because a bloody corpse did not look good on a stone altar, most victims were either drowned, strangled, or poisoned. Visitors to the site often claim that there is an eerie quiet, a strange chill in the air, as if the countless dead still linger. But the most tangible trace of what happened here are the stones of the temple itself. According to legend, the stones were moved to this site from a valley some 14 miles away. From hand to hand, the rocks were passed along a chain of 18,000 people and stacked at the temple, all in just one night. An epic feat, considering that the stone walls were nearly 30 feet thick. Heading south along Hawaii's east coast, a lush wonderland awaits. The Waipio Valley. Once thousands of people lived here, cultivating bananas, coconuts, and a spinach tasting plant called taro. But in 1946, a tsunami devastated the valley. Most of the survivors left, and the wild took over. Then, in 1961, President John F. Kennedy started the Peace Corps, and the Waipio Valley was chosen as the site of one of its first training camps. A living classroom where volunteers prepared for the rigors of life in underdeveloped countries. Today, the camp is long gone. Only about 50 people live in the entire valley, farmers mostly. This part of Hawaii has slipped back in time, becoming nearly as remote and untamed as when it was first carved in the earth. Its sand beach is black from where ancient volcanic lava flowed to the ocean and was crushed by the surf. And deep inside the valley, its cliffs tower some 2,000 feet high. One of the highest free-falling waterfalls in the world is here, a spectacular 1,300-foot drop. Inland from the valley is the sprawling Parker Ranch, the site of a remarkable American success story. The rags-to-riches tale of a vagabond sailor who turned his skill with a gun into a dynasty. At the turn of the 19th century, herds of longhorned cattle roamed this part of the island. They were wild, dangerous, far from the domesticated breed of today. Within a decade, there were so many that locals felt threatened. To control the population, a local chief hired a man named John Parker to hunt some of the cattle. Parker was a New England sailor who had jumped ship on the island and was known as a good shot with a musket. Because the cattle lived in canyons, the best way to hunt them was on horseback. Parker favored horses with a keen sense of smell. The sooner a horse could perk its ears and alert him that his prey was nearby, the sooner he could get off a good shot. Before long, Parker was salting the beef from his kills and selling it to the whaling vessels that came to port. In no time, salt beef was a bestseller, becoming the island's chief export. When Parker married the chief's great-granddaughter, a dynasty was born. He domesticated his own herd of cattle and acquired this land you see. Eventually, the Parker Ranch grew to over 150,000 acres, becoming one of the largest cattle ranches in the nation. South from the main part of the Parker Ranch looms the mammoth Mauna Kea volcano. From base to summit, it towers more than 5½ miles, higher than even Mount Everest. The last time Mauna Kea erupted was some 3,500 years ago. Mauna Kea means White Mountain, for the snow that covers its peak. In the 1960s, NASA sent its Apollo astronauts to train on Mauna Kea. It seems that the terrain here is similar to that on the moon. Today, scientists still flock here, this time armed with the most powerful telescopes in the world. The thin, clear air makes it an ideal place to study the heavens. In recent years, astronomers using these and other telescopes atop Mauna Kea have made key discoveries about the formation of stars, the origin of black holes, and the web of dark matter that stretches across the cosmos. Meanwhile, a mere 50 miles away is Mauna Loa, a giant of a volcano. Mauna Loa has erupted 33 times. The last eruption was in 1984. The mostly unpolluted air atop Mauna Loa is nirvana for scientists. In this case, the subject is climate research. It started in 1958 when American geochemist David Keeling set up his instruments here. He wanted to find out if industrial carbon dioxide was heating the surface temperature of the Earth. Keeling found that CO2 levels in the Earth's atmosphere were increasing at a rate of 3.3 billion tons a year. It was a milestone discovery, the first measurable data to establish a connection between global warming and rising CO2 levels. The most active volcano on the island, in the whole world in fact, is Kilauea. The volcano has spewed lava continuously since 1983, unleashing molten rock at temperatures up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. As the lava flows down the hill and meets the sea, it produces a cloud of steam like this one. But don't get too close. Inhaling the steam can sear your lungs and kill you in minutes. Once it cools in the ocean, the lava hardens and forms a crust that expands the surface of Hawaii's coastline. Since the 1980s, lava has expanded the island by more than 500 acres. Called lava extinctions, these tracts of new land belong to the state of Hawaii. The ruling was handed down by the state Supreme Court after several landowners claimed the new shoreline properties as their own. But as the volcano creates, it also destroys. Of the old lava flows. Heading west from Hawaii, the next island in the chain, Maui. The aviation hero Charles Lindbergh said of Maui, "If there is a heaven on earth, it's here." Today, the port city of Lahaina on Maui's west coast bustles with a fleet of pleasure boats. But in the 1800s, this was the center of the Pacific whaling industry. Hundreds of whaling vessels filled the harbor. And thousands of sailors prowled the streets. Among them was a young man named Herman Melville, whose experiences at sea later inspired him to write the novel Moby Dick. Now the whales here have nothing to fear but tourists with cameras. Maui is the whale-watching capital in this part of the Pacific. Each year, more than 1,000 humpback whales, like this mother and her calf, migrate here from their Arctic feeding grounds. The mother whale keeps her baby close. They'll swim together like this for the first year of the calf's life, the mother teaching valuable skills that will help her baby thrive and grow. What may look like play to us can be the mother showing her calf how to maneuver when attacked by a predatory shark. Another reason so many people flock to Maui is the shoreline. There are more than 80 beaches. While most look like this one, others have sand of bold, unexpected colors. Black, green, red, all from ancient lava flows. At every turn, Maui is a romantic paradise, considered the #1 destination for weddings in the world. Traveling on West Maui, the mountains and rugged coastline are a magnificent wilderness, so wild that parts of it have yet to be fully explored. It's in the state. Rare vegetation grows at a rate of only about 1 foot every 10,000 years. No wonder public access is limited. One footprint in the soil causes damage that can take thousands of years for nature to repair. The highest peak in the mountain is Puakukui, meaning Hill of Light. Ancient Hawaiians believed this rainforest was the meeting place between heaven and earth. It was the realm of the gods, that it was good enough for kings as well. According to legend, an 18th century Maui king sometimes lived near the mountain, atop his own godlike realm, a spectacular rock formation called the Kuhakuloa Head. Each morning, the king would dive from here and plunge hundreds of feet into the ocean. This massive temple, Pi'ilani Hale Heiau, is built of lava rock spread over nearly 3 acres. But perhaps the most famous home on Maui, for mortals at least, is here. A church on the south side of the island, where the greatest aviator in the history of the world is buried, Charles Lindbergh. The man famous for his 1927 non-stop solo flight from New York to Paris lived in Maui during the last years of his life. In 1974, he was diagnosed with lung cancer and informed that he had perhaps a week to live. Rather than receive treatment stateside that might prolong his life, Lindbergh told his doctor that he wished to die at home. "I would rather spend 2 days on Maui," he said, "than spend 2 months alive in New York." Lindbergh's grave is Haleakala, the world's largest dormant volcano. Because at dawn, it's as if the sun rises from the crater itself.
House of the Sun.
It's 21 miles in circumference and 3,000 feet deep. The feeling of solitude at the summit is immense. After his visit here, Mark Twain wrote, "I felt like the last man on earth, neglected at the judgment and left pinnacled in mid-heaven, a forgotten relic of a vanished world."